Okay, just a quick test. Can you hear me? Everybody on Zoom, Mr. Lackey? Okay, good. Okay. So it is 6:30 PM and we will call this council meeting to order. And please rise for the playing of our national anthem. Thank you very much. We will move forward with number 3, which is adoption of the agenda, and the motion comes forward from Councillor Maybe, seconded by Deputy Mayor Fody, that the agenda be adopted as circulated. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we are carried. Next item is declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof. Does anybody have an interest to declare at this time? I see none. Number 5, we have no in-camera session this evening, and we'll move on to number 6, which is consent agenda. So the next motion is moved by Councillor Jameson, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that the March 4th, 2024 public meeting minutes be adopted as circulated, that the February 12th, 2024 Committee of the Whole and Council meeting minutes, March 4th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes, and March 4th, 2024 special council meeting minutes be adopted as circulated, and that the January 30th, 2024 Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes be received and filed. Discussion on these minutes as provided. Any comments, questions? I see none, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Next item is number 8, which is staff reports, moved by Councillor Maybe, seconded by Deputy Mayor Fody, that council approve the staff reports as recommended at the March 4th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting. So there is 8.1 through 8.5. Is there any questions or comments before we accept those staff reports? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it is carried. Next item is item 9, information items, moved by Councillor Jameson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Fody, that the information items be received and filed. So prior to this meeting, a couple of councillors had indicated that they wanted to speak to a couple of these, which we will do under this motion. And if there is any action to come out of that, we will separate it out and do separate motions to address those actions if need be. Okay. So, I know that 9.5 and 9.7 are looking to be discussed. Is there any other items on this? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, just for discussion purposes, we can add 9.6 and 9.8. Thank you.
Okay, so I have the 4. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And for you, I just had a few questions for 9.1.
Okay. we can do that as well. So I'd like to go in order, if at all possible, and then we won't forget anything. So if there's no other items, Councillor Lackey, is there anything else you want to have discussed before we move forward? We're good? Okay. So go ahead, Councillor Kelman, in regards to 9.1, which is the background on 405 Lyndhurst Road, Lyndhurst.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to the Director of Operations. I don't even know if you can answer this question. I just wondered why there was such a delay in getting the archaeological report. If you or Mr. Shaw had any idea why we didn't have the report yet. Oh, or to the
So-
CAO.
Well, I'll ask the CAO to answer that question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Worship, and through you, I corresponded via email with Mr. Shaw about the property, and he provided, he was really helpful, had a lot of detail, and I asked the exact same question. He advised that the consultant that was retained, the professional archaeologist, because the weather has been so warm and COVID and all this, he's been actually quite going from one dig to another, and the normal downtime that they've had to do the reports hasn't happened. So this is getting on quite a while. So I have the archaeologist's name, and I'm going to reach out directly to see if what's going on. After all, it is township owned property, so we have some skin in this game. So I'd like to know what's going on. The report will actually need to be reviewed internally by staff as well to make sure that, we understand what's going on. And I think it also has to go to Parks Canada.
Go ahead, follow up.
Thank you, Your Worship. And maybe this one is for the director or the CAO. I just wondered, under alternatives, when it says to leave the property vacant and closed to the public, I just wondered what that might entail in terms of access. Do we have to somehow prevent access to the property if it was to be closed to the public?
Mr. Director?
Thank you, through your worship. I think by that, what we're actually saying is we don't create it as a public space. It remains as a vacant property that, we don't promote the use of it. If we formally designate it as a park, then we have to go through all of the steps that have been included in the report.
Okay, any other questions in regards to 9.1? Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. One of the big items here is any removal of potential hazards on the property, which have not really been totally designated yet because the report hasn't come. But I do know that this is a very expensive endeavor, having similar properties that have had similar things. So I think we have to tread very lightly on how we go about this to make sure that we do keep the community safe and not open it up prematurely to something that we're not aware of yet. Thanks.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Fody.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, to Councillor Maybe's point to the Director of Operations. What's the easiest way to approach that? Should we get to that stage, a core sample or two of the soil, just to see what's there and what depth? Because at $200 a ton, as Councillor Maybe indicated, you could be into six figures or seven pretty quick.
Go ahead.
Thank
Director
you,
Holladay.
through your worship. Similar to what we're doing with a couple of the landfills, we'd have to delineate the limits of what the contaminated soil is. So we'd have to excavate and do samples of the soil that's in there, do T-clip tests and get a sense of what the limits are. And then we'd be able to establish what the volume is from that and apply the rate for remediation.
Any further questions in regards to 9.1? Go ahead, Councillor Jameson.
I'm just trying to understand if Councillor Kelman's question was answered. If for obvious reasons it can't be a public space, however, is there a plan to keep it neat and mow it and otherwise not have it become an eyesore while we're determining down the road what we're going to do?
Director Holladay.
Thank you, through your worship. Yeah, I don't want the director of planning coming after me for property standards. So we would certainly be maintaining it we'd be upkeeping the property for sure.
I wonder how that would work with the monetary penalty bylaw and how we'd end up paying ourselves. But anyways, I find that probably a wise course of action on behalf of the Public Works Department. Any other questions in regards to 9.1? Okay. This is council. We don't take, and no, we had this discussion at committee of the whole. So public input was at committee of the whole. So 9.1, any further comments or questions? Okay, we'll move forward with 9.5, which was the County of Renfrew affordability of water and wastewater systems. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I raised it because while I recognize, of course, that we have a water system that is well managed by our staff and the water is safe and there's great diligence. Clearly, we've known for some years that these systems are very expensive, and I happen to agree with what our friends up the road are saying. And I was trying to find, and I'm publicly going to ask Councillor Gorell if he can find that history of water systems that you sent us all probably 5 years ago when we were struggling with certain things. I can't find it, but it's very telling because it's the history of how they started off provincially and were downloaded, as so many things are. But I would like to see us support this letter simply because we need to bring attention to the fact that these are very expensive and we can't do it on our own. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. I have Deputy Mayor Fody and then Councillor Kalman. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through, I agree with Councillor Jameson and this letter from County of Renfrew. It's just a clear example of what is happening and what's going to happen to other municipalities. We could be so unfortunate ourselves someday, hopefully not. But more importantly, I think we need to send a letter to the province. The province has willfully abstained from renewing impact, which is a huge impact to all of us, as we all know. Yet their day-to-day business seems to be fine on their end. This is a clear example of day-to-day business is not fine on our end. So therefore, I would support this. Thank you.
Okay, so the goal is to send, to endorse the resolution from County of Renfrew. Okay, I'm just gonna make a note of that and we'll go through the rest of them. So, sorry, Councillor Kelman, you're good? Okay. Next item is 9.6, Town of Goderich, return of combined Roma and OGRA conference. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. I just brought this up for discussion. Have you attended early on a combined? I don't think they were combined when we were elected, were they?
They were no, they were separated. You might have went the previous term. By the time we did it, by the time we were elected, I believe that they were split. And there is, I know that for some municipalities, it definitely is a benefit to have them both together. However, it does provide some challenges logistically because of the size of the conference and there's only limited space to do it in. But I would say that before we were to endorse something like that, I would want perhaps the mayor of Westport to come and talk to us about maybe why they don't want them together. I know that in my own discussions with them, and Roma specifically likes having it on their own for a number of reasons, which I won't delve into, but I can't speak for OGRA, but I would say that before we send any endorsement on that is that you'd want to do some research between Roma and OGRA for the rationale. Because it's one thing for a cost expense part, but it's another thing from the organization's part. So I don't know the history of why they were separated in the first place, other than size, but I'm sure there's a lot more detail that we're not part of. So go follow up, Deputy Mayor, and then back to. Councillor
Thank you, Your
Jameson.
Worship. Well, for those of us who had been to both, it would be problematic to join the two now. I mean, both of these conferences are so focused in their own entities that we'd be short-staffed to attend some of these if we were looking for specific answers to something. unless we sent everybody and a lot of the senior management. Whereas we can attend 3 or 4 or 2 or 3 can go to one of these now and cover most of what we need. We didn't hit everything this past year. We missed one we wanted. And it just started before we arrived. That's all.
So your comment is actually not in favor of combining.
I think
two.
so. From the little I know about it, I'm not saying I'm experienced at this, but I think it would be problematic to join them now because they both grown to such a state. I mean, look at Roma this year. I mean, if you were to join the OGRA last year and Roma this year, who could host it? You know, I'm not saying you would have a different 15 or 1,800 members show up. There'd be a lot of the same people, no different than ourselves. But I'm thinking the presentations would end up getting watered down or thinned out to a point you couldn't attend them all.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Councillor Jameson, do you have anything to add?
I support the idea of keeping them separate and maybe for different reasons. Be frank, I think the devolution of the attention on rural municipalities that we've been experiencing over the last 5 years. 5 years ago, I would have said, let's put them together. It makes more sense. But to my personal opinion is the lack of attention to rural municipalities at this time really requires us, I think, to get into the huddle to be able to push back politically, and that makes it a good thing. Thank you.
Fair enough. Any other comments or questions in regards to that one? So we'll leave that one be then. 9.7 Township of Perry request to amend blue box regulation for ineligible sources. Councillor Jameson, you have a comment?
I raise this because I think we need to prepare ourselves for what is going to be a real challenge in 2025. This letter just references the ineligible sources. And I understand why the producers don't want to do that. But on the other hand, the larger issue is some of the thresholds. And I think I've raised this before, having read the reports that our director of operations gave us. It's very clear that we will have a challenge in the rural municipalities because we don't have the volume. And as a result, we're going to find ourselves probably paying more than we are now because we're going to have to satisfy producer expectation to get it somewhere else. That's what it looks like the way I read it. And when you have a threshold for pop bottles at 50% going forward to 2050, that tells me those guys won't have to get out of bed in Toronto to meet their minimums. So we really need to prepare for a very difficult transition in my view. I hope not, but I think that's what's going to happen. So I'd like to support us to support this letter to really begin the process of getting the public attuned to this issue. Thank you.
Okay, so that's another endorsement for 9.7. And any other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Kelman.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I completely agree with Councillor Jameson and would like to endorse this as well. And specifically to this letter, and I felt this the last time we were talking about these future changes, I think that the differentiation between eligible and ineligible sources is going to create a real nightmare for all levels. And so I definitely agree with this letter and the point of not differentiating between the two.
Okay. Any other comments in regards to 9.7? And don't have any other hands up. So we'll move on to 9.8, which is the letter of the Village of Marrickville-Wolford County-wide Food Drive Challenge. And Deputy Mayor Fody, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Well, I don't think anybody in this day and age currently, the last few years, could ignore any letter regarding food banks. We could not only match it, we could let you turn it over to our fire department, could set a new benchmark for it. But with their success the last while collecting food, but to me, you know, if Marrickville is looking for this challenge, I think it's the right thing to do, and I think we should support it. Thank you.
So there's a will to endorse it. Is there a further will around the table to endorse the food? And we'll come up with some creative ways that maybe we can do that. Okay. Okay, so based on that. Oh, right. So my apologies. Mark Lawson is online from our as our Aqua representative. So does anybody have any questions in regards to the annual report for the Ontario Clean Water Agency before we bless and release him? So go ahead, Councillor Kelman.
Just a quick comment. With thanks to Aqua, this report made a lot more sense to me having gone for the tour of the facility. It really helped to be able to actually visualize where everything was. So thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions for Mr. Lawson? I have Deputy Mayor Fody. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, Mr. Lozon, does the fact that we changed the meters in the village of Lansdowne have any bearing on some of these readouts that we're seeing as far as flows and usages, in your opinion?
The flows we've seen have been fairly averaged over like the last 3 years. We did notice a slight decrease in 2022 and 2023 over the 2020 and 2021 period. As sort of noted in the bar graph. It's hard to tell exactly with seasonal temperatures and different things that promote the water usage. But I am in contact with David to basically review where water losses could be happening. So we're looking at that right now.
Okay, thank you. And just a follow-up question, if I may.
Yep.
On the graph regarding maximal allowable rate, we were getting near a red line there in May, again in July of last year. Is that's just to be expected periodically in drier months?
Well, actually, the May, sorry, through you, Councillor, the May high water flows were due to maintenance and flushing. So we were monitoring this. And the July instance where we came close to the permit to take water was the large fire that was on the outskirts of town in the barn.
Right.
So during that time, we were actually stressing the plant and producing about as much water as the permit to take water would allow us. The municipal drinking water license, which is the MDWL,
right,
actually provides a graph of how much water the plant can produce safely. So we were quite a bit lower in that with the municipal drinking water limit.
Okay, thank you, sir. That explains those two incidents and why we peaked then. Appreciate it.
Any other comments or questions in regards to the report that's been supplied? Okay, I don't have any other. Oh, Councillor Kelman, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, forgive me, could I just ask a quick question about the Escott Hall and Springfield House report?
You may. Go ahead.
Through you to the director. I had this question myself, and I just came from a library board meeting, and it came up there as well with our archivist. Just a quick question to clarify about washrooms. And I know this is not being approved, so this is just for information purposes. Do there have to be two washrooms, an accessible washroom and a separate washroom, or can there just be one?
Thank you, through your worship. There do have to be, I don't know if that's good English. There does have to be two washrooms within the facility based on its occupancy. And because it is a public facing facility, it does have to be accessible as well. So we're providing both the capacity for occupancy, and we're also providing the accessibility that were required as well.
Okay. So based on that, I will need to amend the motion as it was presented that the information items be received and filed, save 9.5, 9.7, and 9.8, which we will deal with in a separate motion. So can I have an amendment person willing to amend that? So voting and second, maybe. Okay. 7, 9.8. Okay, so the amendment is that that accept 9.5, 9.7, 9.8. So can I have an amendment, or sorry, a vote on the on the amendment, please? So all in favor of pulling those three out, please signify. And opposed, so that is carried. So the amended motion would read, moved by Councillor Jameson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Fody, that the information items be received and filed except for 9.5, 9.7, 9.8. All those in favor of the amended motion? All those opposed, and it is carried. Okay, so as far as so the clerk has resolutions ready, so we'll deal with those now. If you, yep, I'll read them and then I'll just get a mover and a seconder. So that council provide letter of support to items 9.5 and 9.7 on the March 18th, 2024 council agenda. So that deals with the two endorsements. So can I have a mover and a seconder? I have Councillor Jameson and then a seconder is Councillor Kelman. Any discussion on that motion? Okay. Okay, all those in favor of the motion at hand? All those opposed, and that is carried. Okay, so the third one is the letter of the village from the village of Merrickville Wolford. And that the motion reads that council support the motion from the village of Merrickville Wolford regarding supporting the countywide food drive, and that council approve a $500 donation on behalf of the township towards the countywide food drive. So it does put a dollar amount on there, but we can always augment that through other, endeavors. Maybe we can dress the mayor up in one of the wetsuits or whatever from the dive suits. I'm joking, but anyways, or dunk tank or something. Yeah, that the deputy mayor can do that. So the motion is on the floor to send the $500. Is there discussion on that motion? Oh, sorry, we don't have a mover and a seconder. No, my bad. I thought we did. So can I have a mover and a seconder for that? I have Councillor Kelman and then Councillor Maybe, please. Discussion on that motion. And Councillor Lackey, did you have your hand up? Nope, we're good. He's staying silent. Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Okay, so back to our regularly scheduled programming. So the action items, the first one is moved by Deputy Mayor Fody, seconded by Councillor Jameson, that council approve the award of request for proposal ADM 2024-001 development charges background study and draft bylaw to Watson and Associates to be funded from the 2024 operating budget. So we have the Director of Planning on the line this evening who can speak to any questions about this. So do we have any questions specific? Go ahead. Councillor Grow.
Through you, your worship, in that we have not had any development charges. Just a very brief overview of why it is at this time that the township requires them. Just a brief, broad brush overview of why. Thank you.
Go ahead, Madam Planner.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Sure can.
Yeah, okay. My internet it says it's unstable, so I may cut out at some point. But right now we have no means of having development pay for development or growth pay for itself. So many municipalities use development charges as a tool under the Development Charges Act to try to recoup some of that. So it looks different in every municipality, and that's why we need a background study to understand what we need payments to go towards. But essentially, it's something that would be paid prior to the issuance of a building permit. And it would help offset the cost of service improvements to water and sanitary. It could go towards purchase of fire trucks. It could go towards road improvements. So the development charges background study will identify, based on the township's capital plans and asset planning, what kind of growth costs we're going to be looking at. And then it helps offset the cost of growth through the developers paying those charges prior to the issuance of building permits.
Okay, follow up, Councillor Rowe.
And just a quick follow-up, if I may, through you, your worship. Do development charges apply to single residential, or is it to more commercially oriented programs? Thank you.
No, through your worship, it could apply to both. It would likely apply to both, but primarily residential would be where we would see it.
Follow
When I say residential, so a single residential dwelling would be required, say, hook up to sewer and water. And what about a multi-phased situation as we have discussed at nauseam and length on Lansdowne East? Is that the driver of the idea of getting development charges at this time? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Through your worship, I don't think that it's necessarily the only driver. The fact that we know there's significant improvements required to our water and sanitary services, that we're looking at significant capital investments going forward in other infrastructure. That's really the driver, is trying to find a way to have growth help assist to pay for the costs of growth. So it would apply to a single family dwelling. It would apply to an apartment building. There'd be different rates depending on the nature of the housing that's being built or the nature of the commercial or industrial development going forward. So I guess one thing I would stress is that this is the background study at this point, and that anything would have to come back to council for any recommendations going forward.
Okay. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Footy.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Marnie, just further to Councillor Grell's comment, just for clarity for myself, this applies to any application, not just water and sewer hookup builds, right?
That's correct. This isn't just for water and sewer. This would help offset the cost of roads. As I said, fire trucks, it could go towards
Right.
libraries. It's a very broad, there's a lot more to development charges than just water and sewer.
Okay. Just one follow-up question, if I may. What time frame would you anticipate for a study like this to take or be completed?
The RFP requested that it be done by November, so we could hopefully have it in front of council in December, and start implementing it in the new year. That being said, there are public touch points and public consultation required through the process, and the work plan includes touch points with council as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have Councillor Lackey's hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep, we sure can.
I just had two questions to the director. One is, how does this fit in with the province's More Homes Faster, our bill? And some examples of our neighboring municipalities and what their typical rates are.
So through your worship, I don't have all of the details in front of me right now about what the typical rates are. I think in Gananoque, it's around $3,000. I did look, most of the municipalities around us are charging development charges, and I could certainly email that out to council later this week with some more comparators. But again, the recommended amount is based on what the background study shows for us. So it ranges in the municipalities based on the capital planning and the asset management planning. In terms of the province's More Homes legislation, there are some restrictions on what development charges can be used for and can be applied to. For example, it can't be collected on a second residential unit going into a home or the additional residential units that are permitted. So all of that would be reviewed in detail in the study when it's brought forward to council in terms of what it does apply to.
Is that good, Councillor Lackey? Okay. Any other questions in regards to this background study? I see none, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it is carried. Thank you. Next item is 10.2, prepare and resurface flooring, RFT OPS 2024-001. Motion comes forward from Councillor Jameson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Fody, that council approve the award of tender OPS 2024-001 for the repair and resurface of flooring to 9241329 Canada Inc. in the amount of $53,129.71, inclusive of the net HST. Discussion on the motion. Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, excuse me. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. So this project is for the current Sealy's Bay Fire Hall, if I read correctly, was it?
Your worship, this is to complete the second floor of the fire hall out back. So last year we did the main floor washrooms, we did the lunchroom here in the administration building. So now we want to finish the building off, and then everything will have the flooring all the way through.
Fire Hall 1.
Correct.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? It is carried. Next item is 10.3, supply and application of surface treatment recommendations. So coming forward from Deputy Mayor Fody, seconded by Councillor Jameson, the council authorized the award of tender OPS 2024-002 for the supply and application of surface treatment to Miller Paving Limited in the amount of $629,517.89, inclusive of the net HST. Discussion on the motion. Go ahead, Councillor Graham.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Just as a refresher, can we get a definition of single surface treatment? I remember reading them some years ago and I became confused then. Maybe it's just a touch up on that. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Of course. Thank you, through your worship. So we have two types of hard surface roads. We have low-class bituminous roads and we have high-class bituminous roads. Low-class bituminous is the stone and tar and chip roads. And that's what we put a single surface treatment on. So that's an application of a stone and tar surface on top of an existing stone and tar surface. It's just a preservation technique. With time, the surface will start to break down. You'll have granular that will pop out of the surface. And this is just a refresher to keep your good roads good.
So it would be on a tar and chip or chip tar, it would be another layer of tar and chip.
That is correct.
And I'm sure it's done with the road reports, but at what interval is that kind of reasonable to do on a tar and chip road?
So typically, through your worship, it's about the 5-year time frame. But we've actually stepped away from the time frame judging when to do it, and we're going by the condition of the road. So as we do our road assessments and we get our updated condition analysis of the roads, the asset management plan tells us which ones to do based on, it fits between a 60 and an 80 PCI or pavement condition index. And those roads populate in our asset management plan for us to complete that.
And my last question, do we have an idea how many kilometers of road we're talking for $600,000? You can ballpark it.
I would say we're looking at about 15 kilometers.
15.
Correct.
15.
Yep.
Thank you.
But I guess, not to take your thunder, Director Holiday, but if we looked at 15 kilometers of pavement, how much would that be? Just for devil's advocate's sake.
For 600,000, I would say we'd be looking at about 2.5 kilometers.
2.5 kilometers. So I guess that is the reason why some roads are single surface or tar and chip versus the pavement, because it gives us a bit more stability without the added cost of pavement and maintenance and upkeep of that. So that's why some roads, when you do your condition assessment, tells us that based on traffic patterns, some of these roads, like Darriot, for example, is why we're looking at the traffic and going, this makes sense to put a tar and chip surface on it.
Correct. Yes. As the traffic increases, you need to increase. So the surface treatment doesn't have any gravel equivalency. What it does is reduces the required maintenance on a gravel road. But it's the best bang for your buck. So you try to attack the roads that have the most traffic counts. So I think we'd set a threshold of roughly 300 cars per day, because we have so many roads in that category that are up to the 300. So 300, you cross that threshold, and that's how we're addressing the roads initially. And then from there, we'll move down, because we should be shooting for 200, but there's like 30 sections of road that need to be done. And we won't be doing that right away. Once you get beyond that count, up to 500 cars, then you start looking at a single lift of asphalt, and you're looking at the easels or, the axle counts and the weight and all those types of things. And I know I'm getting too technical here. And then it's subsequent lifts of asphalt to accommodate the amount of loading that it sees with the traffic counts and the heavier traffic. So that's why you see a county road with multiple lifts of asphalt, because it sees more heavy traffic and a higher count of traffic versus a local road where you might have a gravel road that sees 5 cars per day.
It's a very important question that you asked, Councillor Gorell, because not everybody truly understands why some roads get the surface treatment versus others. It seems simplistic in nature, but there is a science behind it. The traffic counts, like the road condition assessment, depending on the type of road and the water drainage and all those factors are put in. So it's important that the public know to ask why you ask that question is there's a science behind it, and we don't just willy-nilly pick one road over another.
I could spend all day explaining and put you all to sleep.
Would you like that, Councillor Gorell, or are we gonna go good for that?
Now-
Maybe we'll leave that for next Tuesday.
And-
Follow up.
And just again, broad strokes, double surface treatment is,
So when you're building a road, you don't start with a single because it just doesn't have the strength. So like when we did Junetown Road as an example, we put a double surface treatment down first, and then we'll follow up with single surface treatments after to maintain the surface. So you start with a double to have that strength in the surface, and then you follow up with subsequent single surface treatments.
LaRue Mills Road, as an example,
Through Mills Road.
in that I live on LaRue Mills Road, was built up probably over 12 inches. Is that the double surface, or is that just a rare example of a road requiring a lot of material?
That is the proper construction of a road with a granular base. Like I said, a surface
That's
treatment.
construction with a granular base,
Correct.
and then you would put double surface, and then 5 years later, maybe a single surface on that. Is that,
Yes,
am I
exactly.
reading that correctly?
Yep.
So that road, or a road of that nature, in 5 years, the cost is enormous per kilometer.
The cost every 5 years ends up being about 10% of rebuilding the road.
Mhm, mm.
And you extend it half the life of what it is to let it fail and then rebuild it again.
Mhm.
So by spending 10% every 50% of the life cycle, you push that requirement to rebuild it out and out, perpetually.
Mhm.
And you end up saving in the long run as a result. So that's why we introduced the preservation techniques, because they say that every 10% that you spend on a preservation technique saves you that big cost in a shorter time period.
I remember seeing the graph of
Yeah.
a couple of bucks spent now, or saves you $2. I remember seeing the graph. It's
Exactly.
quite intriguing. Might be out of place, and I don't want to put you on the spot because we've had no previous discussion on this. But when I consider our asset management plan and these costs of roads escalating the way they appear to go, it would appear to me that it's very challenging for this township to do more on their gravel roads. In other words, to convert gravel to a double surface treated road. It seems a challenge that we can't meet without tens of millions of dollars laid aside. And I've been thinking, because it's that time of year when everybody's roads are falling apart and you get the phone calls, and a lot of them, you realize that this goes on year after year after year. And the point being, have we ever sat down and said, how many tens of millions of dollars would it cost to convert our kilometers of gravel road? And I say that not in jest, because we are spending tens of millions of dollars on a fire hall. If we took that and said, hey, why don't we spend 15 million bucks? What would $15 million debenture get us on converting some of our gravel to double surface roads? I've never really asked the question. It's a tough one, I'm sure. Do you have any
Oh,
something
he's
you want to
ready to
throw out
go.
there?
He's all excited.
You got
'Cause
me
you're
anxious.
asked.
You got me anxious. And I have to thank Councillor Lackey for this. He asked this question of me about a year ago, and I actually did I did the computation of it for him. Yeah. So to convert all of our gravel roads, and this was in 2022 figures or whenever it was that Jeff had asked me, we were looking at roughly $50 million to upgrade all of our gravel roads to surface treatment. Now, that's just the initial capital investment too. And we've talked about life cycle costing and the preservation that we're talking about right now. So every 5 years, we have to maintain those, and put a seal coat on top of them. So this cost that we're looking at now add another 130 kilometers of surface treated road, and we're going to have to do that preservation technique every 5 years on those as well too. So there is a substantial amount of cost to upgrading all of the gravel roads to surface treatment.
Thank you. That's quite enlightening. Maybe we could take a quarter, maybe a third of that.
Well, but it's an excellent question again, and thank you, Councillor Lackey, for being so bold as you were so many months ago to ask the question, because the big, hairy, audacious goals, right? And it may seem out of reach, but as we get our asset management plan tighter and tighter and tighter, and as, you know, we budget better and better and better, we might be able to do some of those things because we're budgeting less expectation of revenues from the casino, which means any overages are helping overfund capital reserves. And these are the things that we can start looking at. So sorry, I'll go back to the director and then I'll recognize other councillors.
I wanted to say that you guys have taken the first step by doing what we're doing this year with Deer Isle Road and Seabrook Road. You know, we're actually starting to chip away at that, and that's the best way to address it, is to start chunking it off a little bit, rather than trying to bite the whole thing all at once. Because, you know, the cost is one thing, constructability is another. We can't build 126 kilometers of road in 1 year. It's not possible for our crews to do that and contractors to do that. There's ditching, there's brushing, there's, you know, all of those little pieces to it. So yeah, I think that you guys have taken the right step by starting this process and starting to address some of these higher class roads, and then, you know, eventually we'll start catching up.
Okay, so I have Councillor Maybe, and then I think Deputy Mayor Fody.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. The one road that I found on the list that I was kind of going, does it really need it? Is the turnaround road north and south, because that does transverse Maple Grove Road, correct? That's the turnaround road that you're referring to. And having said that, it is a light traffic road. There are some residences there, but it's also a road that was the former 32 highway, that which actually has 2 lifts of asphalt on it. So it's actually a very heavy road in comparison to even Maple Grove Road, our own road, or other roads around. So I was wondering why that one hit the list. Thank you.
Go ahead, Director.
Thank you, through your worship. So they came up as a rebuild like for like, and we're actually looking to transition them to a surface treated road, because they don't have the traffic count that requires the heavy lifts of asphalt that we see there currently. So instead of rebuilding it for, you know, 2.5 times the cost, we're looking to build it with a surface treated surface instead of the paved surface, with a bit of cost savings. While they are low resident roads, one of them for sure is used by fire for their dry hydrant, and there's a water access point on that as well. So we're just replacing the surface with another hard surface.
Okay,
One follow-up, please.
sure.
I did travel it recently and didn't find that it was in that bad a shape in comparison to some roads. So that's why my question mainly came up, is its condition didn't seem to be in a state of disrepair or that far, but anyways.
Did you want to respond to that?
I don't have the condition ratings in front of me, but I can certainly have a look at it and provide that information back.
Okay,
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Fody, please go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, my question had been answered, but now that Councillor Maybe has brought this up, I'll volunteer a road to take the recycled asphalt from the turnaround roads if you're looking for a location. Thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions in regards to the motion on the floor for the supply and application of surface treatment to Miller Paving in the amount of $629,517.89? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it is carried. Okay, moving on to 10.4 RFT-OPS-2024-003 supply and application of microsurfacing. Moved by Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Jameson, that council authorize staff to award tender OPS-2024-003 for the supply and application of microsurfacing to Miller Paving in the amount of $190,554.76, inclusive of the net HST. Discussion on the motion? Okay, I'm gonna call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. I guess we had all the clarity we needed in the previous motion about roads. But it's an important thing to everybody and they wonder where the money goes for roads. So I'm glad that we were able to have that discussion. Next item is 10.5, lease agreement with Victim Services of Leeds and Grenville, moved by Councillor Jameson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Fody. The council authorized the mayor and clerk to execute on behalf of the township a lease with Victim Services of Leeds and Grenville. Discussion on the motion? I see no hands, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Next item is 10.6, moved by Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Correll, whereas the ongoing current site alterations being complete at the sewage treatment lagoons located within the township. Now therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to meet with the town of Gananoque to investigate the sewage treatment lagoons agreement pertaining to the regulations and liabilities of the current site alterations. So the motion is on the floor. I know this is a notice of motion coming forward from Councillor Lackey, who is beaming in remotely through Zoom, so he is on the call. However, I'm going to turn it over to the CAO to provide some context of what he's found out, because I know that Councillor Lackey and the CAO have discussed this, and I'll go to the councillor after. Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship, and through you. Councillor Lackey raised this, the sewage lagoons that are supplying the town of Gananoque, or taking the black water from town of Gananoque that are just north of the 401 by the Home Hardware, across the way from the Home Hardware back there. We haven't been able to find any sort of agreements between the township and the town or our predecessor municipality with the town regarding these lagoons. However, we have found Director Holiday was able to obtain a copy of the environmental assessment that was provided through what was then the Ministry of the Environment, or what is now, I guess, Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. And the town of Gananoque is like any other operator of a sewage lagoon, has to perform the monitoring, the tests and all that sort of stuff as anyone. So as far as we know, they are compliant with it. We're not aware of any orders. They seem to be operating it as a good operator would. The property is owned by the town of Gananoque, and they are treated, as far as the township is concerned, just like any other taxpayer. They pay their taxes. They do what they're supposed to be doing on the property. It is zoned appropriately so that they can operate a sewage lagoon on it. And that's kind of where we are with things. With the work that's upcoming, I believe they have to do a new pipe under the 401 and to feed the lagoons. There's going to be some construction on the site. The concern being, I think, is if something is done improperly, or there's an accident leading to some sort of fail of the berm that holds the lagoon, and you've got to deal with all this black water all over the place. In that case, the town of Gananoque would be responsible for all cleanup, all damage. It would be under the supervision of Ministry of Environment, and heaven knows however many other government departments that would want to keep this monitored. They would have to be responsible for all the costs incurred. It would just be like any other taxpayer who has a property that's caused some sort of damage that's crossed the property line onto another. From our standpoint, I'm not sure that we have any ammunition or any leverage to go after the town of Gananoque and say, we want assurances and indemnities and all that sort of stuff. They're a professional operation. They have insurance that they cover, that they have in place for their township or their jurisdiction, just as we do. And so, if we went to the town of Gananoque and said we need some sort of agreement, I think the question, we'd get a head scratch from them saying, well, why now? We live up to all our regulations that we have to meet, all the legislation that we have to meet. We are ongoing monitoring. Yes, we are that's kind of where we are at right now, or at least this is how I see the relationship with this property. Just so, to save anybody asking a question, I believe, the town pays in property taxes approximately 18,000 a year.
So I'm going to go to Counselor Lackey, and Counselor, if you'd like to speak to why you've asked for this to come forward.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. No, there was no malice. I'm just, it was a general housekeeping request that we're doing our due diligence with regard to the property owners in the township.
Okay.
So
So-
that's first and foremost to make sure that because it is, we are representing our residents which surround it, to make sure that we're doing our best to provide them some assurances.
So were you under the impression that there was already an agreement in place?
No, I was not.
Okay.
I had
Okay.
no idea which way. I just knew there was a lagoon there. There was work being done and it was in the township.
Okay. No, that's fine. I just wanted to, I know that in the
As long
past.
as long as we know now, that's
Okay.
fine.
Okay. So I'm going to recognize Counselor Jameson and then Deputy Mayor Fode. Go ahead.
Just just for context, we have our lagoons.
Mhm.
How are they monitored? And I appreciate the CAO's explanation of the MOE and so on. But how are ours monitored by us?
So Aqua does our work for us, but I'll direct to Director Holliday to speak to the specifics of, the Coles Notes version of how they're monitored.
Thank you, through your worship. Our lagoons are monitored. We have somebody on site from Aqua, an operator that is always here working. They do their inspections and they do their treatments and monitor flows and all those types of things. So yeah, we have somebody on site.
And I believe that they have to test the effluent on a regular basis, as it was many, 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 many moons ago when I worked there. We had to test the actual effluent that's being brought out and as it goes through the stages. So that's what Aqua does for us on our behalf and files the reports with MECP, correct?
That's correct, as per our ECA.
ECA, sorry.
Okay, just follow up on that, and I appreciate that. Because we did the tour and it was great.
Mhm.
Highly recommend the lagoon tour.
It's not open to the public at this
Oh,
point, but
okay.
thanks for the
Is
suggestion.
there a revenue? If there's a revenue opportunity, let's pursue it. So one assumes that then the town of Gananoque would have to have similar protocols in place to satisfy their own citizens, let alone their council. Presumably, that's an MOE driven set of protocols that they are pursuing
I believe
and
they
we are
have,
pursuing.
I believe town of Gananoque has their own staff for water wastewater
Okay.
that would do the same thing that we contract to Aqua. And would be required to file the same documentation with the MECP.
Do they?
Yes, they do.
There you go. Deputy Mayor Fode, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. With regards to the Gananoque Lagoons, the right of way they have off Highway 32, is that written down anywhere? That's through private property.
Would have to
All
be
of it, I
there, isn't
assume. There must be something because there is a sign at Highway 32 indicating that road belongs to, it says private property, no trespassing.
Go ahead, Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, I will have to get back to you on that. I believe, if I recall correctly, Director Venditti and I pulled up the property on GIS.
Yeah.
And the road is sectioned off, like you can identify where the road into the lagoons. So there must be something, either it's an easement or it's something, but they do have right of access for sure.
Right.
But I'll double check exactly, see how it is.
Okay.
Get back to you.
And just on a side note, should anything catastrophic happen during a rebuild under the 401, it's going to have to cross likely 6 lanes of traffic. based on where it comes out. It could be before, meaning the Parkway, Gananoque exit, then eastbound 401, then westbound 401 would be the worst case scenario. But just as an off note, if anything should go awry there, I think the Department of Highways would be the big loser. That
Well-
those berms are visually right there. And but if you're working under the 401, I mean, they've got some pretty unique technological equipment now. They did it a number of places last year in the 401 between Gananoque and Joyceville, where they literally bore under the 401 to put in new culverts and such. So, you know, in today's technology, it's not that, you know, big a leap of faith to get these things done and repaired anymore, or replaced is a better case here.
They've already practiced on the culverts, so they should be fine for the sewage pipe. Counselor, maybe go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, we talked about a pipe replacement. Is it the feed pipe or the affluent pipe? Does anybody actually know?
No, it's both. It's all pipes underneath.
Well, to that point, I know maybe a lot more history about the system than I probably should, but the affluent pipe was put in the 80s and runs to the St. Lawrence River, because before that, it used to run into the creek and then run down into the Gananoque River and then out to the St. Lawrence. So that was put in back in Hal McCartney's days, over his property, goes between the rink and the hotel there and on down between No Frills and Canadian Tire to the river. And when Jim King put in the new water treatment plant, the lagoons were built up then, which was in the 70s when that plant was actually put in operation to meet the standards of the day. And I know that the lagoons were rebuilt at that point too. The affluent pipe that I talk about was in the 80s when that was put in. So that's why I'm kind of wondering which they're actually fixing, because one is much newer than the other one. And I would see the feed pipe from the town pumping station being the one that is maybe failing under the, not that it really concerns us per se, other than because the affluent used to run through what was the old Gananoque Gun Club property down the creek to the Gan River. So any leakage would actually end up on the town of Gananoque property after that, because the northern side is all hills and rock face. So,
Well, the good news is that that's not our circus and that is not our monkeys to deal with. I don't envy town of Gananoque that hill to climb, because that is definitely going to be a very expensive venture on their behalf. And I know that their mayor has been working with the government on that, to the point earlier made tonight with the costs soaring in regards to water, wastewater treatment facilities. But getting back to the task at hand, the motion, I'm going to read the motion again, because based on the conversation, I'm not sure which way you guys want to go with this, but it's moved by Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Garrell. Whereas the ongoing current site alterations being completed at the sewage treatment lagoons located within the township, now therefore be it resolved, staff be directed to meet with the town of Gananoque to investigate the sewage treatment lagoons agreement pertaining to the regulations and liabilities of the current site alterations. So I'm going to call the question on this, but it's up to council whether you want staff to go forward or not. So all those in favor of the motion as it's presented? All those opposed, and it is lost. Okay. So Mr. CAO, you can take that off your to-do list. Mayor's update. So tomorrow is the first day of spring. And it snowed today. So anyways, I really do think that this weather swing has been very unique for sure. This also means our recreation programs are starting up soon. So if you have an interest in our rec program starting this spring, please look online to register for a program on our website. And we're also asking for help to shape the township's website refresh by taking a few minutes to complete our survey. It can also be found on our website. So the deadline to complete this communication survey is March 22nd. So that would be in the end of this week. So if you want to put input into how our website looks, feels, works, please take that survey and give us some feedback. The application period for the youth bursary program is now open until March 31st. Township residents graduating from high school in either 2023 or 2024 and are planning to pursue full-time post-secondary education in 2024 are encouraged to apply. We're calling all community organizations. The Community Grants Program spring intake deadline is a month away. Applications are due on April the 7th. So any community group that is looking for support from the municipality, please be aware that if you need any help or you have any questions, Tracy Holland here can also help along with our treasurer and director of planning, or I'm sorry, not director of planning. So the treasurer, sorry, it's the treasurer, that you can, if you have any questions or concerns about the process, please let us know. Also calling all property owners on private roads and lanes. The TLTI private road grant for capital improvements is open for eligible road associations to upgrade their roads, private roads, and increase access for emergency vehicles such as fire and ambulance. Applications are due June 7th. So that is Director Holiday. I got ahead of myself. So if you have any questions or you're unsure on how to file the application, or you need some advice on what you need to do in order to qualify for this grant, please reach out to the staff here on site. I also want to say thank you to the Sabera group for yesterday's Story Fest. It was my first Story Fest, strangely enough, in 5 years. I got to hear from Dr. James Raffin as a fundraiser for Sabera about his work up in the Arctic. And it was extremely interesting and uplifting at the same time, some of the work that's happening that we don't even know about, but the hope and the passion that they're bringing to the North, to the children, to other people that are just exploring the stories that Dr. James brought back was really fascinating and very intriguing. At the same time, a little disheartening when you look at the ice melt and you look at what's happening up in the Arctic and how it's affecting global warming in general, and the icebergs that we used to see versus not, and the progression of the ice melt it's a bit overwhelming when you're looking at his graphs, but nonetheless, very, very interesting talk. And I appreciate the opportunity that Sabera put together. And there was a full house to listen to him. So it was great. I know that Rockport Rec Hall has an Easter parade, I believe, on March 30th. So bring your Easter bonnet, bring your Easter basket. I believe it's April 30th. We'll make sure that we add it to our website and social media. I know that there are a number of fundraisers going on with the Lansdowne Agricultural Society as well, gearing up. So are there any other announcements? Anybody want to add anything that is happening going forward? Oh, okay. So that's another reminder. Thank you. We did have International Women's Day celebrations here in and around the township. I was able to attend one at the Fire Hall Theater along with Councillor Kelman and Councillor Fody. There was a few men in the room, so it was good for support. It was a very well organized event, well attended, and also very inspiring, talking about people contributing to our community, both from a business sense and a community sense. And the speakers were excellent. I also was able to attend another International Women's Day event, which was held down at the Ivy, Club. And they were raising money for breast cancer research. And they had some surprise dancers that showed up. I'm actually looking past you. So some of our, you forgot that the fire chief is there. Some of our fire people showed up and for a little comic relief, and nobody lost any clothes, but it was quite a dance, and it was very appreciated, and it was a lot of fun. So thank you to the fire people that went down to support a very good cause. They also, I believe, took some donations, some food donations out of there. It was part of the food donation drive that they did. lastly, I'd like to recognize the passing of Doreen Haffey. Doreen Haffey was a lifelong resident here of Lansdowne, who was also a ladies auxiliary member for our fire department for 47 years. So Doreen passed away at the age of 96, I believe. And so her family were very touched when our fire group accompanied her to her mass at St. Pat's over on Kidd Road. And that meant a lot to the family. So thank you to each and everyone who took the time out to make that special. It was well deserved. She was always there to support her husband, but also our community. Also a great volunteer for the Lansdowne Agricultural Society and many other endeavors. So our thoughts are with the family at this difficult time. And lastly, I'd like to wish everybody a happy Easter for those who celebrate, which will be in 2 weeks. And if you, I think I'm going to try to make myself an Easter bonnet and head down to Rockport for the parade, just to, so I'm challenging Councillor Gorell to find his Easter bonnet. So enjoy the time with family, friends. If you don't celebrate, then choose to get outside and enjoy the extra long weekend. Any other announcements? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to put the fire chief on the spot. We have some members of our firefighters down in the Dominican right now, as well as other first responders. Can you shed a little light on what that process is and how it works? Thank you.
Through Your Worship, yes, District Chief Ian Robertson has been a long-serving member with Firefighters Without Borders Canada. He's instrumental in helping fire departments in Ontario and beyond, working with a couple of different people from around the area to make sure that fire departments that are in need of older equipment and out-of-date equipment are getting the equipment they need, both in Ontario and outside Canada. This year, Lieutenant Chris Kirkland went with him. They're down in the Dominican Republic to help with the distribution of some equipment and some training for some of their members in the Dominican. So we're pretty excited to have both those guys as a part of that, for sure.
We also have a local paramedic, Cassie Cross, who's also
Yes.
training paramedic for paramedic services down there. So she is she's a member of the paramedic team out of the United Counties. So I'm really excited to hear about the stories they have to tell and some of the good work that they're doing down there, for sure. Any other announcements? Pardon? Oh, right, next week. We have a public meeting for the Kehoe application, planning application on March 26th, the evening of the Tuesday. We also have an offsite council work planning meeting with senior management. That's on Tuesday during the day. And I think that's everything for next week. So. And that's an in-camera meeting because we're talking about HR matters and staffing and things like that. So training. Sorry. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? I don't see Councillor Lackey's hand up, so I'm going to put the last motion on the floor for bylaws, moved by Councillor Gorell, seconded by Councillor Kelman. The 3 readings and final passage be granted to bylaws number 24-012, 24-013, and that 3 readings and final passage be granted to bylaw number 24-014, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Corporation of the Township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands at its March 4th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting and March 18th, 2024 Council meeting. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. And next motion is moved by Councillor Kelman, seconded by Councillor Gorell, that council adjourn. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Safe travels, Councillor Lackey.